Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. I'm talking about the Inflation Reduction Act. It's 1 year birthday, often referred to as Biden's landmark climate legislation. A couple things to note right off the bat. One, no Republicans voted for it. Good old Ron DeSantis even apparently has used his line item veto power to stop Floridians from being able to access funds from the IRA. And since it's Biden's hallmark piece of climate legislation, why is it only called inflation reduction and not inflation reduction in climate? Before I answer those questions, just looking at what is IRA, well, if you watched my shows last year on this, you'll know the Natural Resource Defense Council and many other environmental organizations largely applaud this piece of legislation. NRDC points out that it's going to help promote a transition towards renewable energy, electrification of buildings, as well as the transportation sector, meaning EVs, greener, less carbon intense manufacturing, production of steel, concrete, chemicals, and aid or support a transition towards greener or more regenerative, more carbon sequestering agriculture, which the NRDC explains could simply mean a return to, in their words, more traditional, less chemical intense agricultural methods. And it has a lot of support for the onshoring of manufacturing back to the US of A, as well as subsidies towards domestic manufacturing, but excluding subsidies or tax incentives towards foreign-made goods. Some might call that protectionist. Now, when that IRA first came out, I told you not all environmental groups were like, yay, 100%, but they were like, yay, but some caveats about it. Earthjustice claims that part of the deal also allowed for easier permitting of fossil fuel projects like pipelines, and that was a topic I addressed when I was discussing Joe Manchin and that West Virginia pipeline. It has supports for carbon capture rather than simply getting away from fossil fuels. That, and many environmentalists believe that's a way to then help bolster that industry, give them more power. And it provides supports for nuclear energy, which if you watched my show Nuclear Power 101, you'll know that nuclear energy is not the first choice of environmental organizations. To bring us back to today, here's an NRDC headline I'd like to share with you. IRA's 1 year anniversary, toasting a game-changing finance program. EPA's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is set to catalyze billions in clean energy projects across the U.S., particularly in low-income and disadvantaged communities. Well, that's a pretty solid endorsement, amigo, and some of the projects they list are community-owned solar, small business transportation, building decarbonization, and they point out that all this here greenhouse gas reduction is also going to result in cleaner air to breathe, pollution reduction in general, jobs, and cost savings. So jobs, I think it's great they brought up all three of these, because a lot of people will say things like, I don't believe in this climate change, but I don't like all this pollution we're putting out there. Well, it's the same beast, amigo. Number two, I'm worried about jobs and we can't protect the environment. We gotta blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not jobs versus the environment to a degree. It's really what kind of jobs are you employing people in? Three, they point out savings. Well, the main way I'm seeing here is through conservation, more efficient products like heat pumps or energy efficient appliances, and also transitioning towards renewable with storage and grid connectivity. The idea there is you're going to break our reliance on the volatile ups and downs of oil and gas. Okay, so why do no Republicans support it? Well, some people might say that's partisan evidence proof. No, I've shown you before, going to open secrets, that the lion's share of fossil fuel money goes towards Republicans. But what you should be highlighting for yourself here is, why don't Democrats talk about that, and why doesn't the media talk about that, or Democrats in general don't? Well, here Bernie Sanders would tell you it's the donor class. Yeah, maybe Democrats overall are getting less money from fossil fuels, but they still got a lot of wealthy people and wealthy corporations donating to them. They don't want to rock that boat and start pointing out, hey, look at these rich people or rich organizations that are controlling our system. Similar dynamic with the media. It's all either owned by wealthy individuals and large corporations or sponsored by them. And what's really crazy to me is when I hear people say things like the economy was handled better by Trump. I don't even know what you mean by that, because as far as I can tell over my lifetime, the main economic platform of Republicans going back to Reagan has been deregulation, which means weakening environmental protections, usually a bad idea, and tax cuts for wealthy people, individuals, and large wealthy corporations. Well, I don't see how either of those benefit average people at all. If anything, it hurts them. And it just reinforces kind of this mindless, go nowhere consumer economy, just make stuff for the sake of doing it, whether you need it or don't. You get a little sugar high, meanwhile, the planet's heating up and getting more polluted. I use the word protectionism just to point out a little bit of a negative aspect that I want you to be aware of. So environmentalists and me as an environmental thinker, I've always really never supported these big trade deals. And I remember arguing with people when I was much younger. What sense does it make to just ship all the way across the oceans and bring stuff all the way across the oceans? Why not just make it here? And somebody in a political science class argued with me, that's capitalism, baby. I don't even know what he meant by that exactly. But you're burning a lot of fossil fuels to ship things around that could be grown in your own region. So I generally support buy local, make local, local sourced. But there is the positive aspect of trade that got lost in all of this is you want to get things you can't get in your own place or your own country from somewhere else. So an example, now that we're doing all these restrictions with China, well, China makes some really low cost EVs, is my understanding, that are very low on frills and don't have all these technology embedded in it, just a simple electric drivetrain. We can't get those here. And there's other examples as well that I could give you. Furthermore, I feel this plays in with this new Cold War mentality. And I don't think that is a mentality that's going to get us towards a cleaner, greener, more livable planet. That's a mentality of endless warfare. And when you got a bunch of nuclear missiles trained on somebody, well, I don't see how they're going to feel comfortable easing away from fossil fuels when they know any day they might be in a big conflict with you. And in that regard, rather than thinking in terms of like us versus them, I would urge you to think in terms of that us versus them mindset is often a way to distract from change at home. Well, heck, partner, I hope you found this interesting, useful, good food for thought. And in the meanwhile, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. You click that notification bell. You're liking, you're commenting. Support a Patreon. Thank you, Bella Grissi, Environmental Coffee House. And as always, until next time, peace be with you.